You know, when people say that they feel free and they're okay with being single, and I say yes, I feel that same way. And I'm a widow. So let me explain. My husband was a womanizer, and he was a narcissist at the same time. This is before we got together, okay? And as husband and wife. And when I was his girlfriend, he didn't treat me right. That's why I broke up with him. Okay, so at the end of the day, he came back 7 years later. I didn't have any intentions on marrying him. And I wasn't in love with him when we did get married. I loved him and I cared about him, but I wasn't in love with him. My husband took me through so much stuff when we was girlfriend and boyfriend that, I mean, he just completely wore me completely out when it came to being emotionally attached. I was drained. I was mentally drained. So when we broke up in 2014, I knew that I didn't not want to get involved with nobody else. I didn't want no more relationships. I was done with relationships. I felt that way. 7 years later, when he came back into my life, I still felt the same way. You know, he got so bad that I had to shut down my company to take care of him. Before he got really bad, he asked me to marry him. Now, with me thinking about everything that we were going through and our past history that we have together, you know, I agreed to marry him. I said, yes, I will marry you. It made things easier to get things going and decisions that I had to make because he was really, really sick. And he just deteriorated, you know, as time went by. He used to have epileptic seizures. He had renal failure. He was in diastolic heart failure as well. He had a leg amputation. He had a stroke. He was going through so much to where, you know, I was his total caregiver. I was his everything. His brain, his arms, his legs. You know, saying I had to do everything. So at the end of the day, when we were going through the process of him declining, him and I had an argument at one point where I had to give him an ultimatum. Back in the day, he had put his ex-wife on his paperwork and he never changed it. And he also had his uncle on there, which was fine. The problem came when he kept having these medical issues and these people were talking to me because they thought that I was the ex-wife. Okay, so come to find out that they were calling her every time he wouldn't show up for dialysis and things like that. And I guess they were in communication with each other still. Okay. So one came to one point where he was in the hospital and he ended up having a stroke. And the ex-wife was texting his phone. I had his phone at one point. And I saw that she was texting. So I told him that she's texting, and I told him that I was going to respond to let her know everything was okay and that she doesn't need to, she doesn't need to worry because everything is taken care of now. You know, not being smart or nothing like that or slick or snarky. But at the end of the day, he was fine, and I didn't need for her to continue to keep texting and that type of stuff because she was supposed to no longer be in his life. So anyway, she ends up calling. I answered the phone. I introduced myself, let her know who I was, and I told her that, I thanked her for everything that she had done and that she doesn't need to call or to be concerned anymore. I have it under control. She didn't like that. At the end of the day, I don't care. I said what I had to say. She didn't like it. I hung up. She ended up calling the nurse's station. So that let me know right away that him and her had been communicating. So I could hear her out there because his room was across from the nurse's station. And he had a male nurse. His name was Mike. So when I came back, around the corner, right where, where I was still in the room. When I came around to his bed, and I told him, I said, hey, look, I said, you're going to have to make this decision right now, like I have been saying. Either you get her name off this medical records, or you keep her name on there and have her come up here. I said, because these people are calling me every time something's going down with you. And I'm here with you. Now, she can come up here and pick up where I left off at, because I'm out of here. I said, unless you get this straight right now, I said, I'm out of here. I said, and she can worry about what needs to come next and to pick up where I left off at, because I'm up out of here. And once I'm gone, I'm gone. Because it happened before. All right? So he was like, no. He said, I want to take her name off of the papers and everything. So his nurse came back in and told her. He was like, well, she says she has medical power of attorney, and her name is on your paperwork and everything. And he said, no, her name is not on anything. I don't need for her to call, and you don't need to share any information. My fiance has everything, and everything is good. Okay. So, therefore, cut all that off. So, the fact of the matter is, I had to fight with him, because I had been telling him before this had happened, because he ended up having a stroke when he went into surgery. So, and when he came out of it, they come to find out he had a stroke. So, therefore, it got to that point to where I had to get him to remove her name off of his medical records. Okay? So, because before he got smart mouth with me, he was talking about before this happened. He was like, well, why you worried about that? You don't got to worry about that, because you shouldn't be looking at my paperwork anyway. But here I am, the one that's driving you around, making sure your doctor's appointments is situated, and making sure you take your medicine and eat right, because you can't do it yourself, and helping you with everything. He's still a little bit mobile, but he still wasn't able to do things properly for himself like he used to. He needed help with getting dressed. He needed help going to the bathroom and that type of thing, So he was getting smart back then. So I was ready to step off at that point. You know what I'm saying? So he made that decision. We got that cleared up, and we was able to move on. So down the line, you know what I'm saying? Got through that process. Then a few months later and stuff, he got smart again. He was in the rehab. I don't know what was going on that day or whatever. And I had left him that night, and we were talking, and he said something smart, because he had a sitter in there with him. He had another female nurse. He was like, I ain't worried about what she's saying anyway, because my ex-wife will come and take care of me. Okay. So I said, well, good. Get her to do that. And I hung the phone up. I was ready to finish it all. You understand? I was ready to just let it all go. By this time, he had his leg amputated, and he was in rehab in order to get himself together to come out and come home. Okay. So I heard the girl in the background telling him that he's not right, and he was wrong. He was like, she's the only one that I've ever seen come up here and take care of anything. He said, she was saying, I doubt if that ex-wife would do anything for you, because she's your ex-wife. And I told her, I said, yeah, you are correct. I said, that lady ain't worried about him. I said, because she would have left him for dead a long time ago. But I'm going to go ahead and get off this phone. So I hung up the phone. Not even a minute later, he calls right back. And he tells the girl, he was like, here, you talk to her. She don't want to talk to me. And I said, just let him know, good night. I heard what he said, good night. So then we got off the phone. So that was the second time he talked about that ex-wife. Okay, so he was getting to the point to where, fast forward to the point to where he was getting ready to pass away. And he was telling me, he's ready to go. He was ready to go. Because we always discussed it when he was getting tired to let me know. So I told him, I said, I'm going to miss you and everything. And, I love you. He wouldn't tell me that he loved me and everything. So I thought that was kind of terrible at one point. And he just sat there. He didn't even say it back. And we were communicating at this time. He was sitting up in the bed, and we were talking and everything. He wouldn't tell me that he loved me. So anyway, after he passed away, I got a phone call from the ex-wife, and she got my number because I knew her sister, and I didn't know that was her sister. So her sister had saw me in the store, and she was like, "Oh," she said, I heard that John passed away, and I'm so sorry and everything." And then she told me who her sister was, and I said, "Oh, okay, that was your sister." She was like, she said the insurance companies and everything, you know, she needed insurance. Insurance people was calling her, and people calling her, and she don't know what to say to them. Is it okay if I give her your number? I said, "Sure." I ain't had no problem with that. So she gave her my phone number, and the ex-wife ended up calling. So this is what she said. She said, "Hi, how are you?" I said, I'm doing okay, taking it one day at a time." She goes, "Well, you know he left me everything, right?" That's what you say? Okay. I said, "Oh, yeah?" I said, "Well, it's hard to leave somebody something when they ain't got nothing." I said, "You do know that we got married, right?" She said, "Oh, I didn't know that." "Yeah, we got married." I said, I'm his widow." I said, "John didn't have a thing." And I said, "As far as the life policy is concerned," I said, "I know that's not true because we did a nationwide search on that. And the policy that he did have, they canceled that out from his job. And that was nothing but $140 that was invested in that. They already canceled that out before he even passed away." I was like, "So I don't know what information you have or anybody that's calling you, but you are welcome to direct them to me. You are welcome to direct them to me. Anybody that got any questions or anything like that." So then she went into, never talked about that again, okay? Because to me, it sounded like she's a gold digger and she was looking for something. She had no idea that John and I had gotten married. That's his name, that we had gotten married. So anyway, she started asking me all about all these rings and talking about, well, does he have the rings that we got married with? You know, because I had them designed. They was Versace rings, and they were custom designed and everything. And we had yada yada yada, you know, clothes to match and all this type of stuff and all that. I said, "Sweetheart, I've been with John for a long time." I said, "I have never seen these things that you're talking about. Even before we even got married." I said, "If he does have that," I said, "I won't have any problem returning them to you." I said, "But I can guarantee you right now he don't have that." I said, "All his stuff is in storage." I said, "But you do know that he was a liar, right?" So she ain't say nothing. She's like, she said, "Well, we got married at Taj Mahal." And I said, "Yeah," and it still ended up in divorce. "We got married at Bedside Baptist, and what? That doesn't mean a thing." "I'm not sure why you felt the need to tell me that." I said, "Because he showed me the pictures. He didn't show me any of you, but he showed me the event itself with him and his mother and everything." She's like, "Oh, well, did you meet his mother?" I said, "No. Unfortunately, when I met John, his mother was already deceased." Okay. She's like, "Yeah, because I used to call her mommy." I don't know what her angle was, but at the end of the day, I wasn't impressed. And I was very respectful, okay? And I told her, at the end of the day, John doesn't have any of these things that you're asking about. I said, "But if I do find them, I don't have any problem with returning them to you. Now that I know who your sister is and I have your phone number and you have mine," I said, "I don't have any reason to withhold anything from you. But I can guarantee you he doesn't have the things that you're asking for." She said, "Well, he told me he had such and such and such and such." And I said, "Yeah. And you know he was a liar." So that's how the conversation ended. But my husband was very exhausting. He was a very exhausting person because he just had game. And I told him when we broke up before, I said, "I don't know what you're looking for, but you'll never find it." And he never found it until he came back to me. Everything he was looking for, he found in me. I don't mean to toot my own horn, but toot. Okay? When you got somebody that is mentally unstable to where they don't know what they're looking for and they're always searching for something and they don't even know what they're looking for, and they are narcissists on top of that, yeah, it's always going to be an issue. It's always going to be an issue. And it's a sad thing that at the end of his life, he still didn't humble himself enough to know that he did not do right. Okay? And it's very sad that the people that were here in the area where he has been for the longest time, because he's from out of state, people didn't care about him passing away. They did not care about him passing away. He didn't have no good friends here. He did not have no good friends here. The friends that he talked about, I reached out to them, and they could care less. And even the friends that he did have from back in the day, you know, the relationship wasn't as tight as it should have been. So I could tell he had a rocky relationship with everybody, you know, male and female. But he was a womanizer and he was a narcissist, and he gave me a run for my money when it came to playing games, you know, and I ended it. He tried to play these games, and I had to tell him, you know, saying, you can't play no game. I said, I'm a coach. I'm not a player. I'm a coach. So I know these things. I knew him better than he knew himself. So any game that he tried to play, I already knew what he was doing. I already knew what he was doing. I ain't had to snoop. I ain't had to look at his phone. I ain't had to check nothing. He just wasn't good at it. He wasn't good at cheating and all that type of stuff. So at the end of the day, he wanted this cake and eat it too, and I wasn't fitting to do that. Okay, so that's why I say being single is freedom to me. I'm not interested in meeting nobody else and being with nobody else. I don't want no more relationships, none of that. People ask me all the time, do I get lonely? Or, you know, if somebody sees me out or whatever, and I'm dressed, I'm put together and everything. You know, they want to take me out and that type of thing, and I'm not interested in that. I'm not interested in being with nobody. I'm good. I'm free. If I want to walk around looking like this all day long, every day, I don't got to worry about it. I ain't got to dress myself up if I don't feel like cooking. I don't have to cook. I don't have to do none of that. I cook for my great nephew that I'm raising. Yes. And you always see him in my profile picture. That's my great nephew. Yes, I cook for him. I have a grown child. You know, he can decide if he wants to eat or not. Other than cooking for my great nephew and sometimes his little sister, I don't have to. If I want to eat a bowl of cereal, I can do that. I don't have to worry about taking care of no spouse or none of that. I want to get to the point to where I can be responsible for myself. Just be responsible for myself. You know? I don't have a problem with taking care. My nephew that's hand in hand. That's my boy right there. I don't have a problem with taking care of him. I love him. You know what I'm saying? The kids, that go hand in hand. I don't have a problem with that. But being a widow, it's been emotionally crazy, I can say. It's been wild. It's been up and down. The grief has been there. It's sadness. It's anger. You know what I'm saying? I'm at peace because he's at peace. I'm sad because he shouldn't have, you know, I feel like he shouldn't have died. You know what I'm saying? But I know at the end of the day, if he was still in the land of the living and he was okay, him and I wouldn't have been together. We wouldn't have gotten married either. We sure enough wouldn't have. And I know that. I know that. So I believe I was put in his life just to usher him into the kingdom. Because, see, God knows you better than you know yourself. He can see everything. He wrote the ending before he wrote the beginning anyway. He knew that my husband was going to pass away. He knew how he was going to pass away. And at the end of the day, my husband had a praying family. Somebody prayed for him. Because my husband would have died like a homeless person, all by himself. And somebody would have found him days later after he passed away. He would have died a miserable death if I was not in his life. Because he lied about everything. Small stuff, he would lie about it. He lied to his family that cared about him. And people really genuinely cared about him and loved him. He was a big teddy bear, as far as I'm concerned. So, at the end of the day, being a widow has been crazy. And I never thought at my tender age, I was 50 years old when he passed away. I believe I was 50 years old, 50, 51 years old. I can't remember. I'm age 54 now. But I never thought that I would be a young widow. I never thought that I would watch him pass away. I was there when he took his last breath. I remember when him and I first met. I remember how vibrant he was and how active he was. And to watch him deteriorate like that, yeah, it's very sad. Very sad. I know his family loved him. I know there was people that loved him. But he did not treat people right. I loved him, but he did not treat me right. I can honestly say that when he passed away, my whole body collapsed. And I cannot recover from that. I now have a spinal injury that has taken me away from working now. I am retired. I am fighting for my disability. I've been fighting it for 3 years now. I can no longer do the things that I used to do. Can't take care of patients anymore. I used to be a hospice care coordinator and home health aide and med tech. I can no longer do those things any longer. My husband took everything out of me. I'm still fighting. I'm still going. I'm still trying to do the best that I can. I have arthritis in both knees and in my back. And the worst thing you could do is sit still. And I'm trying to do the best I can. I sleep in a recliner chair, a power lift chair, because I can't sleep in a bed because everything will spaz out. And as long as I've been sitting here and it's 21 minutes, I'm going to be stiff trying to get up out of this chair, and it's going to be very painful. Being single is not a bad thing. I could not imagine getting into another relationship with another soul. Everything that I had, all my love, all my time, all my patience when it comes to being a spouse was put into my husband. Even when him and I separated 6 years from the 7 years when he came back. Yes, I'm exhausted. All my energy, time, and love goes into my great nephew. I am struggling to take care of him the way that I want to take care of him because I don't have the income that I used to have. He's got wonderful grandparents on his dad's side that helps me with him. And his dad assists with that. His mom is in his life. As far as when it comes to financial, all I got to do, if I run into really hard times or whatever, I can call them and they assist me with taking care of him. With the little bit of things that I need to take care of, for him. Doesn't require too much. They help me with getting his hair cut. They buying him shoes. They get him everything. They've been doing this ever since he was born. Before I got him when he was 5 years old. And I wouldn't trade anything. I just want to be able to get my income, from the state so that I'm able to take care. I want to put him in sports and, to come up with, I think it's $187 per session for both sessions. It's expensive and I just can't do it. But at the end of the day, I know it's going to work out. 2026, I'm praying for a better year. I want to get him more shoes than what he has. I just want to be able to do things for him. All the stuff that he requires as a 9-year-old. He's not a materialistic little boy. He's very grateful. His manners are very good. I don't want him to be left out of things. When it comes to, celebrating, certain things. And it was one time that we was going to Sky Zone. And I had to max my credit card out after taking care of household stuff. I thought I was going to be able to use cash, but when you got there, they were saying, oh, we don't take cash. So, with the little bit of credit that I had, I do everything I can to take care of my nephew, and I don't have a problem with that. But I pray that it's going to change in 2026. I am a reseller, and I need to get back to that. I sell jewelry as well. I sell everything. I do have an eBay store. I have a Poshmark store. I was on Depop. I think I need to go on there and list some more items and things, but I got this YouTube channel because I needed another outlet. I am in grief counseling. I've been in grief counseling for 3 years. But counseling ends within 45 minutes. And the feelings that I have are still there. I'm grieving my sister harder than I am grieving my husband. I'm not grieving him too much anymore because, he's at peace and it is what it is. It's nothing that I could do about it. I do love him. I send him love, peace, and light and prayers. But I'm really going through a lot dealing with the death of my sister, my baby sister. Like I said, she was 45 and she did not want to die. But at the end of the day, I'll be making another video about that, because they dropped the ball on her, and the medical industry is crap now. It's not the same as it used to be. And I'm going to be calling things out as though it should be. Maybe just to warn other people if they're deciding to have this bariatric surgery. It's not an easy fix. It's not an easy fix, and everybody's not a candidate for it. But most of these doctors won't tell you that because they want the money. And they could care less if you live or if you die. At least in my sister's case, they didn't give a damn. And they dropped the ball. And as far as I'm concerned, they killed her. She made the decision on getting this done. And I wish she didn't make that decision. But they dropped the ball on a lot of things, and she passed away. And it happened suddenly. That's why my family and I are grieving very hard. And it was 3 of us, and that was 2. So we're having a very hard time. But anyway, thank you for listening to me ramble on about, being a widow and being single and how I feel about it. I'm okay with being single. Being a widow has been really crazy. I'm not grieving as hard. But I will say I am at peace. Dealing with a narcissistic, womanizing spouse can really take a lot out of you. And you do have mixed emotions. I don't hate him. I never hated him. I was in love with him at one point, but I just wasn't in love with him. And am I exhausted? Yes, I'm still exhausted. 3 years later, I'm still exhausted. I wish things could have been different. But I'm trying to be real to myself. To know that if he was still living, and if he was okay, him and I wouldn't be together. We probably would have communicated from time to time. But we wouldn't have gotten married. I probably would have just been the in-between person. But as I was packing his stuff, I saw a couple females that looked just like me. Okay? So, I don't know if that was because I let him go 6 years before he came back. And he couldn't let it go. And he knew that when I said I was done, that I was done. Yeah. So at the end of the day, he knew what he had. But his pride got the best of him. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. And if you can be so kind to give me a thumbs up or drop a comment, I'll respond. Thanks for listening. I appreciate you guys. Take care. Happy New Year.